Welcome to another fishing adventures. This is what we've got planned for you today. You've got to feel your way into a session. You've never ever had an hook. Why I always start my session with a really strung out shotting pattern. Got another little tiny perch. Not the best of conditions today. It's blowing an absolute hoolie. It was freezing cold last night. The water's mega clear, but the plan of attack is relatively simple really. First of all, going to be using dead maggots. Okay, there's not a fish alive that won't eat maggots. We've got a mixture today of just red and whites, and I tend to fish dead quite a lot of the time because a lot of the fisheries that I fish, particularly natural waters, have got really silty bottoms, and live maggots will burrow in a little bit, so the fish aren't going to necessarily come across them and see them. Having said that, I don't know if that's right or not, but dead maggots always give me a lot more confidence because I know no matter what the base of the water is like, I know that because they're dead, they're not going to move around. So that's why. So dead maggots, reds and whites, and I've also got a little bit of black ground bait. This is a senseless ground bait. I absolutely love it, especially in clear water. Fish for some reason will always feed confidently over a dark ground bait, particularly when the water's clear, and I think it's because they're still camouflaged from the predators, whereas if it was a light ground bait and they're swimming over it, they're going to create shadows and shapes. So that's why. That's the theory anyway. As I said, it's blowing an absolute hoolie, so I've just got the margin pole with me today, 6 meters, and I think that's going to be plenty. I'm just going to fish a line in the middle and maybe, depending on the conditions, just try a little bit later on in this little margin here, just to see if there might be a bonus fish lurking. But yeah, we'll see. 4.5 foot where I'm fishing, right in the middle of the centre channel, and to be fair, there's not a massive amount of variation around in this little area, but it is quite weedy at the bottom. The bottom 6 inches is full of weed, so I'm fishing dead depth just to see. I've had 3 or 4 little perch out now, just on maggots, just on the bottom. I've got a funny feeling they're going to come up in the water a little bit later on, and hopefully there'll be some roach as well. Now it is blowing, as you can see, an absolute hoolie, and it's not making conditions ideal. But with this pole float, what I've done is I've got a good 2 foot between the tip of the pole and the float, and that just gives me enough for when the pole starts blowing around in the wind that I'm still in control of the float basically. Now I'm only fishing a small 6 meter margin pole purely because I knew it was going to be quite windy, and there's nothing worse than trying to control a pole in high winds. So the margin pole tends to behave a little bit better. It's a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter to handle, and to be honest, you don't really need to fish the far bank. It's quite clear today, the water. There's still a little bit of colour in it, but it is quite clear. So we don't want to spook any potential fish that are there, so I can keep the pole well out of the way. It gives me a lot more control in this wind. The bites have been coming, and they've been quite shy, slow, really tiny little dinks. The float I've got on is just a little tiny 4x8. Now I've got about half the bristle showing, and even that is a little bit too much, to be fair. But in this wind I daren't really go any smaller. I also brought the feeder rod with me in the faint hope that I would be able to bomb a feeder out, but I can't. And there we go, another little tiny perch. And there's thousands of them in here, and they're just beautiful little fish, fin perfect, probably never been caught before. And it's just good fun. If this wind had died down, or it was the middle of summer, you'd absolutely bag up. Oh, has my maggot come off? Yeah, can't catch fish without any bait on, can we? So yeah, just a single maggot. I did start off with quite a spread out shotting pattern, but they seem to be getting it as it's settling on the bottom, and it's been there for a little while, so I'm not going to chop and change it too much just yet. I just want to try and catch some attention from any other fish that are in the area just by letting that bait slowly fall through the swim. So I'm just feeding really little and often as well, probably half a dozen maggots at a time, just to try and just feel my way in, just to see exactly what is going on, because we know the perch all shoal up. They're normally in big groups, so once you start plugging away at them, you can guarantee quite a few. And then what will happen is the roach will tend to move in, or the skimmers, and they'll basically just bully the perch off. And that is ideally what we want. But because the silvers will see the perch feeding, it does tend to attract them in, because the fish are nosy, they're really curious, and they will come and investigate things. Yeah, a little dink there. It's always worth sometimes as well just lifting and dropping. If you're getting the little indications, it's always worth just lifting and dropping, because the fish will intercept that bait as it is just slowly falling back through the water, especially after you've just fed as well. So if you've fed and you're getting those slight indications on the float, it could be that the fish are mid-water, and you're just getting those indications as they're bashing into your line. And this is where knowing how your floats react is key, really. It's working out what is happening in your swim, and that is another reason why I always start my session with a really strung out shotting pattern, because it lets the bait slowly fall through the entire water column. And if you've set your float up right and you know how it reacts for the shotting pattern, you can tell when those indications are coming, and then you can chop and change it. If they are intercepting the bait and taking it in the lower third, you can put your bulk of shot nearer to your hook, so you get into those fish faster rather than just letting it slowly get there. Do you know what I mean? And it's just doing little things like that, especially during a match, that can give you that extra fish, that extra 2 fish, and that could be the difference between nowhere and getting a little brown envelope. God, that wind is proper gusting. It even makes it difficult to loose feed as well when it's gusting, because your bait just goes everywhere, which is a bit of a nightmare. So I did rather optimistically bring that, oh, there we go, yeah, bring that feeder rod, which I ain't going to be, it's come off, look. But I also thought, oh, I'll chuck the float rod in as well, and maybe have some exploratory chucks to the far bank. But the only thing I'm going to catch on that far bank is those trees and those weeds, and I ain't doing that. That was a bit of I hope another perchy. So you could literally just, whoa, catch one of these a chuck. You really could, and they're all getting it bang zero right in the top lip. But look, they're just absolutely fin perfect. Never ever, stunning little fish. It's always important to get some sort of rhythm, some sort of routine going as well when you're fishing, and particularly on the pole. I don't, as a rule, like to use pole pots that often if I can help it. Generally because I am clumsy. And if there's a pole pot on my pole, you can guarantee I'll bump it off the roller and my feed will end up totally where I don't want it, or I'll end up spinning the pole at some point and all the bait will fall out before I've got it to where I want it to be. So for me, it's just too much hassle and aggro. Do you know what I mean? So there we go. That's it. Oh, little dink there. That they do want a feed. They want to be following those maggots as they're going down, basically. So with this one, if this wind drops a little bit, we'll feed and then we'll ship out. I'm going to feed a few more maggots. I'm going to feed about a dozen, 12 to 15. Oh, this is now horrendous. Yeah, I'm trying to line up with a far bank marker, which is a bit of a stumpy cut down tree, but its wind is horrendous. If I was fishing a slightly shorter length of line between the pole and the float, I'd actually have a back shot on the line. And by a back shot, I mean a heavy shot, like a BB, something quite heavy, and that just helps keep the line between that shot and your pole stable, and the rest of it between the shot and the pole tip flaps around in the wind, and it does make a huge difference, particularly if you're fishing at a distance. At this short range, it's not a massive aggravation because I've got it quite under control, but if it was a shorter line, say a foot or 8 inches, something like that, you definitely need a back shot on, because keeping that float where you need it is crucial, really, because if it's dancing around and moving about, it's not looking natural to the fish. It's looking a bit raggedy. You can only get 2 or 3 perch out per maggot, so it's always good economy. And it's always best just to try different things, just keep chopping and changing until you find what they want. On some sessions you might be feeding very, very little, like 3 or 4 maggots per chuck. Other times you may feed half a dozen and you'd get 3 fish before you need to feed it again. But I see a lot of people, especially on commercials, where they turn up to a peg and they'll literally just fill it in and then wonder why they're not catching. You've got to feel your way into a session, because if you fire in, say, 20 pellets your first cast, you give it how long before you bring it in? 10 minutes, you fire another 20 or 30 out for your second chuck, you've got potentially 50 or 60 pellets on the floor and you're one hook bait. So if the fish do come in, it's going to take them a while to pick it up. So it's always best, especially in winter, just to drop your hook bait in to start with and don't feed anything. If you're in a match, see what everybody else is doing. If you notice someone catching, then just watch them for a few minutes and see what they're feeding, see what they're doing, and then just slowly feel your way into it. And on natural waters like this, it's anyone's guess as to what's going to happen, but I always start the session the same way. You've got to have that strung out bulk, so your bait is falling slowly through all the layers of the water. Look for the indications and that will give you a good idea of where the fish are, and then just slowly introduce the feed and see what happens, because you can always change your feeding pattern, but once you've filled it in, it's filled in for good and you've wrecked it. It's always better to start off slowly and build it up than fill it in and hope for the best. This is getting horrendous now. It's on the limit of being able to control this, and as I say, it's only 6 meters. It's just, oh my days, blowing a hoolie. The keep net wants to disappear. Like I say, the umbrella's absolutely blooming destroyed, so that was a complete waste of money. I hate fishing under umbrellas anyway, but I got it primarily just to protect the camera. Missed him. These bites are so delicate. I think the fish are really small as well. Come here, Paul. So yeah, the bite indication on that was barely visible, especially in this chop. But because I use the shotting tube at home and I mess around with the floats, and I know that when it's a slight little dink and a blink like that, that generally is a tiny bite. F1s bite so shyly as well, which is why it's important to get your float shotted really critically balanced for your hook baits. Yeah, there we go. I think that's just come off. Yeah. Right, so that bite was pretty instantaneous there on that one. So trying to hit these bites in this wind now is going to be horrendous. Jesus wept, man. I would not be surprised to see some surfers turn up here today. No. Oh man, this is horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. It's probably a word I've said 8 million times already today. Oh man alive. This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. And there we go. The tiniest little net of perch you've probably ever seen, but not bad for an hour's little sport on an absolutely freezing cold, wintry, horrible, manky day. I'm more than happy with that, to be fair. So we'll let them go. Off you toddle, and away they go. And I'm really happy with that, to be fair. It's a miserable day. It's freezing cold. The wind's horrendous. It's impossible really to hold the pole still, but to get them out, it's made my day. It's not always about catching bags and bags of fish. It's about getting out when we can to enjoy the fishing and just have some fun. And catching small perch, it just brings back so many memories of being a kid. They were one of the first fish I caught, and for a lot of anglers, a lot of youngsters starting out, it's the fish that they will catch first, unless they go and visit a commercial where they're going to be targeting carp or F1s. But yeah, get back to basics. Remember why you love fishing. Yeah, I've had a great day. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's definitely time for a cup of tea. Hit like, hit subscribe as well if you haven't already done so. Leave a comment, and we'll catch you later. I don't believe this, honestly. The brolly basically blew over, so that's in bits. Yeah, but anyway, we've got a few fish biting, so let's get a few out. Let's have some fun. What the heck was that? That's the brolly blowing away. Oh, God. man. You've come loose now, haven't you? Oh my days. Honestly. Right, how has that even happened? Right, so my top kit is now fastened around my freaking rod bag. Bunch of gimps, man, honestly. Well, the umbrella has blown away down the bank, so I've had to go and rescue that. I've now wedged it under the car, so hopefully that won't give us any more grief. But oh my lord, what a day. Oh, what an eventful hour and a half, if that. Crazy.